Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. Word around the campfire seems to be that WBO Super Flyweight Champion Mizuki Hiruta of Japan is on the hook to satisfy her mandatory challenger, Mizuki, who was in action not but 1 or 2 weeks ago in America on the West Coast. Opposite the ring, former champion and seasoned fighter Maribel Ramirez, who she beat the brakes off of. But now she is so confronted with Argentinia's own Carla Merino, sports professional record of 16 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 4 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 18 professional bouts. The story is that Carla was actually paid to step aside, paid to stand down, so that Mizuki could have that fight on the West Coast with Maribel Ramirez. But now that she's had it and she's won it, she's on the hook. And as a champion, she's got to do what she's got to do. Would seem that Mizuki has some kind of an arrangement with Tom Loeffler's 360 Promotions. Tom Loeffler, that used to promote Gennady Golovkin, he still promotes his own shows on the West Coast, promoting fighters like Sergei Bohachuk, Iana Berduzco. And I think he has some kind of an arrangement for Mizuki to box on his shows moving forward. Mizuki, who the last 2 years has only boxed 2 times, once in 2023, once last year, and she's already fought once this one. That's good, so when she goes into this Merino fight, she won't have any ring rust to shake off. Maybe that's why they paid her to step aside, so that Mizuki could have the chance to get a little warm-up fight in. Very exciting fighter who will now be facing Argentina's own Carla Merino, that comparatively has been a lot more active the last 2 years. She boxed 3 times in 2023, 3 more in 2024. Last in action in November of last year, opposite the ring, Roxana Bermudez of the Fighting Bermudez Sisters. Carla knocked her out in 7 rounds, scored a 7th round TKO stoppage. She can punch. She's knocked out her last 2 opponents. See how she's just hanging back, working off the counter, using Roxana's aggression against her to catch her on the way in with counter right hands over the top, counter left hooks around the side, clean uppercuts up the middle. Very good countering ability there, as stated. Carla has knocked out her last 2 opponents. Mizuki Hiruta has knocked out her last 3. The fight's a little bit tough to call, because while Carla Merino has a lot more fights and a lot more pro experience than Mizuki, I don't actually think she's as talented as Mizuki. I think Mizuki has a higher ceiling. Tack on that Mizuki's been training in America with Manny Robles in her corner, who I have a very high opinion of. He's an underrated trainer, helping to make Mizuki better. So while Carla Merino may have more fights and more pro experience, more rounds in the bank than Mizuki, it's not a foregone conclusion at all. It's not a foregone conclusion that wins Carla the fight. Mizuki is getting better. Much better and more dangerous. So the fight has the appearance of a 50-50 fight to me, where you can give Mizuki a slight edge, because even though she's less experienced than Carla, she does have a higher ceiling, bit faster, quicker to the draw. She's a strong puncher too, and she's got the better corner. She's got Manny. The fight isn't made yet, so we don't yet have a fight date or a location for the match. Important details, but first look, I give Mizuki a slight edge to retain her WBO title against Carla Merino if and when the time comes. Mizuki really is the standout of the super flyweight division. She stands out more than anybody, more than the other two champions at the weight. She's a special fighter, pleasing aesthetic with a bubbling personality and a style that is easy to digest, easy to enjoy. Slight edge to the champion, slight edge to Mizuki. Men's featherweight news ahead of this weekend's mega match. Stephen Fulton takes aim at becoming a two-division champion by settling up with his old buddy, Brandon Figueroa, who is now WBC featherweight champion. Featherweight Stephen Fulton has an opportunity to become a two-weight world champion, but first must go to war against Brandon Figueroa again to achieve that. Philadelphia's Fulton, 30 years old, might have won his first encounter with the Texas-based Figueroa at junior feather 4 years ago. But on February 1st, the circumstances will be different as they prepare for a rematch at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. The crunch encounter will take place on the Benavidez vs. Morrell undercard with Figueroa's WBC featherweight title on the line. Fulton says he's ready to embrace the difficulties associated with facing the battle-hardened Figueroa. The first time out, most would tell you that Stephen was very lucky, fortunate to get the decision. He barely made it by Brandon at 122. Now they are set to meet again at 126. Maybe I'll be victorious in winning another title, Fulton told Boxing Scene. Whatever I need to do to get the job done, that's what's going to happen. The remake has helped my legacy by me fighting for this WBC title at a second weight, so I'll be a two-weight world champion. In a close and competitive encounter, Fulton earned a majority decision over Figueroa in their initial meeting. Two judges scored the bout 116-112 in Fulton's favor after 12 grueling rounds, while the third judge saw it a draw, 114-114. Fulton became unified WBC and WBO junior featherweight champion in the process and went on to successfully defend the titles against Daniel Roman in June of 2022, but Fulton lost the titles to Japanese star Naoya Inoue 13 months later in August of 2023. The same week as the long-awaited, long-anticipated Crawford vs. Spence fight. That was a hell of a week. In September of last year, Fulton, 22-1 with 8 KOs, won a split decision over Carlos Castro in his only bout since losing to Inoue. Fulton spoke about how he had to learn to deal with Figueroa's style of boxing on the inside during the first fight. I just have to be myself, and when I am myself, I control the narrative. When I'm just me, when I just be myself, have fun in there, and just fight however I want to fight, as well as make the adjustments that need to be made, he said. Once again, I gotta fight how I fight. I just gotta be me. Show separation. I don't want to say too much about giving you the things I want to do. I had to be a smart fighter. I had to outthink him and be way smarter than him that night. Meanwhile, Figueroa, 25-1 with 1 draw, 19 knockouts, was upgraded from the WBC's interim title holder to its full featherweight champion after Ray Vargas suffered a shoulder injury. Figueroa had beaten Mark Magsayo and stopped former 122-pound title holder Jesse Magdaleno in May of last year to clinch the WBC interim title. On February 1st, Figueroa will be on a mission to avenge his only career loss to Fulton. Fulton, however, believes he's had to work hard to win another world title in order to see what the future holds for him. I'm not sure yet. I just want to focus on this. Get the win. And then I'll think about the future. But I want to focus and get this win. Will he? I don't think so. Not against Brandon. Not at this weight. He barely made it past him at 122. At 126, which is a better weight for Brandon, not as physically taxing on his statuesque frame. He was always very big for a 122-pounder. He's still big for 126, and at this weight, I think he punches harder than he did at 122. Whereas at 126, Stephen, he still can't punch, and he doesn't seem to take a great punch. In his last fight with Carlos Castro, if you saw it, he got caught a couple of times, and he got dropped in the 5th round. This weekend's fight is only his second fight since having lost to Naoya Inoue well over a year ago, and only his second fight since having moved up to featherweight, embarking on this featherweight campaign. He could have stood to have been a lot more active. That's the story of Stephen Fulton, who is a talented boxer, or he was, though not active enough the last 3 years to stay on the level. He only boxed once in 2022, only once in 2023, only once in 2024. He's not living up to his potential. That run of fights that he had from 2019 to 2021, 4 unbeaten fighters, beating all 4 of them. Stephen Fulton could have been a lot better. 2 world champions. He beat 2 world champions in that time frame. Angelo Leo for his WBO, Brandon Figueroa for his WBC. He could have been a lot better. So what happened? We could argue that a lack of activity doesn't help any fighter. We could argue that. But maybe he was always going to lose to Naoya Inoue, because he knew he's a talented boxer himself. Supremely talented. It's not so much losing the Inoue fight, I think. It's how long it took for him to come back. 1 year and 2 months. That's far too long. He fights Inoue in July of 2023, doesn't come back until September of 2024. Perhaps what he should have done was take a page out of his old buddy Angelo Leo's playbook and cross over to Pro Box. Go wherever they can get you fights with some regularity on a regular basis, because it seems to me that waiting for the PBC to sort him out is what kept him out of action. Whereas if he would have migrated to another platform like Angelo Leo did, he would have fought more and perhaps amassed more momentum. By now. It's been 4 years since the Brandon Figueroa fight. It's been that long. It doesn't feel like it, but that fight with Brandon was 4 years ago. The Brandon he's facing this weekend is a more maturated fighter, better acclimated to this weight than Stephen is. So I've got Brandon winning this weekend. This time, I think it's going to be Brandon that has his hand raised. This time, I think he might stop Stephen Fulton. Years ago, I actually picked Stephen Fulton to win the first fight, and he did. At least on paper he did. But now, some time has passed and the situation has changed. It's different, and it's Brandon that has the edge going in. So I'm going with Brandon. Brandon Figueroa, who is targeting a Naoya Inoue fight for after this, saying, yeah, I have the power to knock out Inoue. Anything is possible, especially with the way I fight him. Beyond this weekend's rematch with Stephen Fulton and that chance to avenge his lone defeat, which I think he will, what does the future hold for Brandon when he's still at the PBC and the biggest fights for him involve other fighters that are on other sides of the street, Inoue included? He's putting a cap on how far he can go by staying at the PBC. I heard on the grapevine that reigning WBO featherweight champion Rafael Espinoza is going to be in attendance for this weekend's fight, likely scouting the winner. A fight between those two here in the United States could move the needle for the featherweight division in a way that it doesn't normally move. As Americans don't normally take in featherweight action, featherweight fights, they don't normally watch the lower weights, but that's a fight that I think would grab their attention. Figueroa versus Espinoza. Crawford. So you have to wonder what the future holds for Brandon Figueroa beyond this weekend's fight, when all the big fights for a featherweight, and even the one that he's targeting involving a super bantamweight, would involve him working with other promotional outfits, other fighters that are on other sides of the street. He by himself does not possess the kind of marquee value to where he can afford to operate like an island. Staying on the island that is the PBC really puts a cap on what's available to him and how many times he can get out there and defend his title, make money, amass marquee value. At some point, you got to change your decorum. You got to grow. You have to leave the nest.
Spoken to Tank, he really doesn't want to do anything that's less than top tier. So I think he's going to insist on a fight like Shakur, something of that magnitude. Maybe it's Shakur, maybe it's Ryan Garcia rematch, maybe it's something like that. But I don't think we'll see him in anything short of those kinds of fights going forward.
It's the same old stuff from Stephen Espinoza. For how many years did we hear empty promises, just like this one, ahead of a Gervonta Davis fight? That after this fight, he's going to target this guy and he's going to target that guy. They're talking about a Ryan Garcia fight. Sequel. A Ryan Garcia rematch. For what reason would there need to be a second fight when you knocked him out the first time? These days, it looks like you want the rematch more than he does. He's got a 3-fight engagement with Turkey LL Sheik that kicks off with a Rolly Romero fight then a Devin Haney fight. He just enrolled in VADA testing to see all of this through, and to make matters worse, you guys are separated by weight. His next fight is going to be up there at welter, whereas you're still down there at lightweight. What are you going to do? Try to hit him with a catch weight again? Rehydration clause again? Do you think he's going to go for that, knowing that you're the one who's scratching and sniffing what seems tantamount to begging for a second fight, likely because that's the only time Gervonta Davis did any real numbers with a pay-per-view. He's been on pay-per-view something like 7, going on 8 times. Leo Santa Cruz, Isaac Cruz, Rolly Romero, that's 3, Hector Luis Garcia, Ryan Garcia, Mario Barrios, that's 6, Frank Martin makes 7, Lamont Roach would make 8, and of the 8 pay-per-view appearances he's had, he's only cracked more than his normal 200,000 buys once. Just once. And that was with Ryan. That's why we keep hearing about a Ryan Garcia rematch. At this point, does Ryan even want one? If it means he has to boil down to 140 or some catch weight in between 140 and 135, do you think Ryan will subject himself to that, knowing he's on the fast track to a big Saudi bag? I don't think so. Gervonta Davis might have won the first fight and won it by way of knockout, but it seems to me that he needs the rematch with Ryan more than Ryan. Ryan doesn't need Gervonta Davis to make money. How much do you think Gervonta's gonna make boxing Lamont Roach? Of all people, how many people do you seriously think are gonna buy that fight? Stefan mentioned Shakur. A Shakur Stevenson fight that Gervonta Davis himself is always downing, always downplaying, asking why should he fight him and what has he done? I mean, just the other day, he was on live camera, snapping at reporters for even asking him about that fight. And this is who you expect us to believe he's gonna target after Lamont. While he's trashing Turkey LL Sheik. To make matters worse, he's been trashing Turkey, who Shakur is now affiliated with. And I'm supposed to believe this is somebody he's gonna go after the Lamont Roach fight? No, I think he'll go after Isaac Cruz. I think if Isaac beats Angel Figueroa this weekend, what we're actually gonna get is Davis versus Cruz too. Then why is Stefan talking about these other guys, these other people? Because if he told you that all they're gonna do is repackage and refurbish and redistribute the same old fight you already saw 2 or 3 years ago, that's not as exciting as saying he's gonna target Shakur or he's gonna go after Ryan. Stefan is just doing his best to try and engage you, keep you engaged, and bring you along. They're trying to give you a reason to spend 80 or 85 of your hard-earned dollars on Gervonta Davis's next overpriced pay-per-view on the premise that after that, he's going to target Shakur or he's going to target Ryan, as if anybody's asking him to fight Ryan again. Spare me. I've read that book before. Like I said, if Isaac Cruz makes it past Angel Figueroa this weekend, Gervonta Davis's next fight is likely a rematch with Isaac. Isaac, who just turned down a Ryan Garcia fight for later on this year. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be because somebody promised you that Gervonta Davis rematch you've been gunning for 2 or 3 years now? Could it be because of that? That why go to Saudi and why box Ryan when you can have a rematch with Gervonta? It's even more peculiar as I think the fight with Ryan would have actually paid him more than the rematch with Gervonta. But that's what I'm expecting. I don't believe a word Stefan Espinoza says.